Hey guys, Dempsey here. So I was actually in the middle of prepping to do another review entirely, as you can plainly see, when I stumbled across something that, to me, I feel like just cannot be ignored. Dave Chappelle published, or Netflix published it, but Dave Chappelle has a new stand-up special. Notice I didn't say comedy, but it's called 8:46, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, in reference to the tragic death of George Floyd. And I didn't see too many people talking about it when I looked it up. I think it came out today. It's #2 on trending on YouTube as of the time I'm recording this video. I'm pretty sure that'll change as it becomes more known and more people begin to dissect it. Now, it's totally unlike anything else that he's ever done before, and I do mean that in a very good way. In case you probably don't know, I'm a huge fan of Dave Chappelle. I have been for as long as I can remember, and that probably says a lot about whether or not my parents monitored what I watched growing up. But yeah, I really do enjoy his work. I think he's a brilliant comedian, and ever since his comeback a few years ago, you know, after he turned away from the spotlight, I think that he's especially shown this interesting kind of bravery with the ability, or with the way that he tackles PC culture in general. And not to say that this special is necessarily tackling PC culture. I want to be very careful with how I phrase things talking about this, because everything that he addresses here is very delicate. It's a very important subject. I'm not going to say touchy, because it's not touchy at all. It's absolutely important. He talks a lot about not even the Black Lives Matter movement, but a lot of the things that have happened that have caused society to get to this point. And it's the lens in which he frames it is why I think it had such a huge impact on me. He talks about it from a very personal perspective. He mentions, and I don't want to really spoil anything, and I do highly recommend you check this thing out, because it really is important itself, I have to say. Early on, he talks about how for the past few weeks, a lot of people have been calling out celebrities for their silence during these protests, saying that their silence is complicit with everything that's going on. And he calls it out, saying that just because he's been quiet about the issue doesn't necessarily mean that he isn't aware of what's going on. I think he says it really nicely early on that he's very proud of what everybody else is doing. He's very proud of the generation that's decided to take on the driver's seat, and he feels very comfortable sitting in the back. And I think it's a very good way of putting it. Personally, I share his opinion just because no issue was ever resolved when everybody got up to speak at the same exact time. Some people, yes, it's important for them to talk, but it's also equally important for others to listen. And I think that's exactly what he was getting at. And I like the fact that he talks about how he doesn't need to talk about what's happening for other people to see what's happening. He doesn't want to be Captain Obvious in that regard. But going back to what I said before about his personal connection to it all, he mentions that 8:46 is not only the amount of time that the officer kneeled on George Floyd's neck, but it's also the same exact time that he was born. Yeah, he has a bunch of other interesting connections with people and events that have happened throughout history that not only out of courtesy am I not going to talk about it or spoil here, but because I do think, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that this is a very important, I don't even want to call it a special, but you know, a very important dialogue that he has here. And not to say that he puts things in perspective, but he really uses his platform for good. I think in brilliant Dave Chappelle fashion, okay, he's talking about how he doesn't feel like he needs to use his platform because it's plain to see what's happening in the world, yet at the same time he's using his platform to pretty much tell people how it is. He's using it for good. He's using it to spread awareness, to educate. And he's not so in your face about it. Now, I do want to emphasize that this was posted on, I think, the Netflix is a Joke YouTube account, which I think in general is just their comedy account. They use it on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. And pretty much it's associated with all comedy specials that Netflix has. But it's not a comedy special at all. There are plenty of jokes in it. Some very inappropriate, yet appropriate ones. 1 second he's talking about politics and police brutality, and then before you know it, he switches it up and he's jabbing at somebody who said that they slept with him. true Dave Chappelle fans will know what I'm talking about. Personally, my reaction to it all is that this is just incredibly relevant, incredibly necessary. Of all the people to come out and talk about this, the last person I expected was Dave Chappelle. Especially just because he released that really controversial special like in October of last year, so people were like, oh yeah, we're probably not going to hear from Dave for a while. And it's interesting because he opens it up, well, the way that the special opens up anyway, it's pretty much people getting seated, but they're forced to be socially distant. So it gives you an interesting look at what the world is going to be like and what these kind of shows are going to have to be like post-pandemic. And I thought that the show was going to focus more on that. Not once does he mention coronavirus in this. And that goes to show just how big this movement has become. Okay? That a virus that changed the way that people live globally isn't even relevant anymore. Because people have found something more important to fight for. Let that sink in. You want to talk about things that can be stopped? Okay, you don't need a vaccine to prevent people from killing each other, to prevent racism. Yeah, I'm never really this political, like at all, especially on this channel. You will only ever catch me talking about movies and television shows. But as I mentioned earlier, after I saw this, I could not talk about it. Okay, it's definitely that important, and I promise it's the last time you've heard me say that. Maybe. It's definitely way more important than the latest Judd Apatow film to come out this weekend. Dave Chappelle, what he's done here, the conversation that he started, he's the first person to talk about it like this, to talk about these issues so bluntly. And I certainly hope that he's not the last, because we need more voices like this. As much as he says that it's not important for people like him to speak, it is absolutely important for people to speak like he speaks, the way he speaks. A lot of people may not know this about me, and it's probably even harder to tell because my name is so different and because I look so ethnically ambiguous. I've actually been told that before. But I too am a person of color. And it blows my mind that over the past few weeks there's been so much pushback on the argument or the issue, or whatever the hell you want to call it, because it's even ridiculous that it exists in the first place, of whether or not racism is bad. And sure, there has been a lot of change that has happened over the past few weeks too, but it's only because so many people have turned out to the streets to demand it. And most of these things are things that should have been in place for years. Okay? I mean, lynching isn't even a federal crime yet, so I think it's safe to say that we still have a long way to go. Now, not only have I never done a video like this, but I've also never done what I'm about to do either. And I'm not going to say that I'm never going to do it again just because you never know, but let me cut to the chase because I know I'm talking kind of fast, okay? This address from Dave Chappelle, which by the way is a far more fitting title in my opinion, is just something that I refuse to rate. Now, what does that mean? I'm not going to give it 5 stars, I'm not going to give it 0 stars, I'm not going to give it any stars because you can't quantify a message like this. It's far too important. Instead, I want to end this video with a quote that I heard once, something that I try to incorporate in my life as often as possible. And it goes like this: kindness is the best currency because kindness is free. And with that, I leave you. Take care.